Let's talk about the plight of workers in Nairobi's industrial area. We'll have a conversation with two gentlemen. One of them is Martin Wairegi. Martin is an engineer, a graduate of the University of Nairobi. And Al Kags is the executive director of the Open Institute. Now, what they've been running is something called the Decent Work Initiative, which, according to a conversation that we'll have with them, was initiated by Wairegi's own personal experience with getting work, graduating, engineer, gets work at industrial area as an assembly line worker, where he worked to produce bottle caps for a beverage company. Then he basically just took to Twitter and highlighted the plight of factory workers through his first-hand experience. On this viral Twitter thread, he exposed the working conditions, the long hours, the little pay for what he described as back-breaking work. This got the attention of Al Kags and his team at the Open Institute, and they decided, okay, wait, maybe there's something we can actually pick up from here. And this is about this kind of information. Can we collect data? Can we use this data to influence a lot of other things? But let's hear it from the horses' mouths. Good morning, horses. Al Kags and Martin Wairegi.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well. Thank you very much for joining us in the Situation Room, and welcome.
Thank you very much.
Let's start off with Al Kags. Just tell us about the Open Institute, and then you can segue into telling us about this Decent Work Initiative. What does the Open Institute do?
So in very simple terms, the Open Institute is a non-profit, and what we do is that we do two things. Number one, we work with government to try and get government to be as responsive as possible. Mm-hmm. Number two, we work with citizens to listen to what government is saying, but also to tell government what it's saying. In other words, we work to promote active citizenship.
Okay.
So when we saw Martin Wairegi's tweet, that for us is an example of active citizenship, where a citizen actually experiences something and then says, I have to do something about this, or I have to say something about this.
Okay.
And so what Martin did is that he posted a tweet that was so important, because he basically broke down in very granular terms what the experience of workers in industrial area is. And we said, well, there should be data. How do we know? How does government know? How do other organizations know that that was not an isolated case, but that is the actual situation that is happening to workers across the board? Which is why we linked up with Martin and his friends, and we work together to collect data in industrial area from other workers, so that then that data is then accessible to you and to everybody else, so that hopefully the people who are supposed to protect the rights of workers can get on their horse and start to do the work.
So what kind of data were you collecting? Is it the kind of job opportunities available? When you say working conditions, what is working condition? Is it the time that you're required to report to work, the length of time you work, the food that you're given, the access to food, access to transport? What kind of data were you collecting?
So the kind of data that we're collecting is everything relating to what it takes to have a job. So what kind of a job do you have? When you do have that job, what are the conditions that you have that job in? How is your pay? How long do you work? Do you have protective equipment? Because the majority of these jobs are manufacturing jobs. Do you have protective equipment? Do you have insurance, just in case a machine cuts off your hand? Do you have, how much are you paid at the end of it? Are you paid per day, or are you paid per week, or are you paid per month? We took all of this data, and it's all available on decentwork.africa.
When you talk about insurance, the other things aren't to us, but this one of insurance, there's something called a workman's compensation. Is
Right.
it the individual who, how do you ensure that your employer has this insurance? I thought it was something that was mandatory, that if you are in any such enterprise, like say the industries, that you must have it.
Yes, you must have it, but there's some loopholes. For example, a lot of people in the industrial area are employed as casuals, as daily casuals.
Okay.
Daily casuals, there's loopholes there in terms of how, in terms of the exclusions that can be done, because of the fact that there are no contracts. In fact, what happens in industrial area is that you wake up in the morning and you go at 5 a.m. to industrial area and sit outside the preferred street that you want to work in, and then you just wait. When the factory opens up, they might call you and say, "Who's looking for a job?" And you raise your hand and you come in and you start working. That is just how a lot of these people are. What we found is that there are people who have worked like that for 20 years in the same factory. But they have worked like that. They wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and they hope to God that they are called in so that they can earn their daily bread. Like that.
Let me understand this. When you talk about a factory, it means they produce something, isn't it?
Yes.
So if somebody works there, shouldn't there be some sort of expertise that this individual brings to this work? Or is it that so long as you're a human being and you can function and you have both your arms, you qualify?
A lot of this work is manual. A lot of this work is repetitive. It's take this cap, and I think Martin will probably be able to explain a little bit better than even I will. But a lot of it is manual. It's hands-on labor. It's that you take this thing and you put it here, then it goes. Then you take this thing and you put it here, then it goes. And you do that ad nauseum.
Let's bring in Martin. Martin, just start by telling us that first tweet and the Twitter thread that you actually shared. It was about your experience working for this particular organization in the industrial area. And you felt you must have gone home feeling completely dejected. I mean, you have studied so many years as an engineer, you were an A student, and then here you are, and you felt that this is not what you deserve. So what was your experience then?
It was quite a bad experience, honestly, because I had so much expectations in terms of job, employment, and progression in terms of engineering career. So when this work came through, I thought this was something that will contribute to my career, that it was something that was heartbreaking, that even after having that job, you can just give up with the engineering path and start something else.
So what is it? What did you go through? What did you write in that first Twitter thread that caught the attention of Alcags?
I think it's quite detailed on the tweet. It started back from where I got the job. The job was referred to me from my school, that's University of Nairobi. I was sent a mail to send my CV. In terms of qualification, I was required to have a degree to do that job. We were a few of us who applied for the job. I remember my classmates also had the same interview, and I think we were two that we got the job. So when I got the job, we were discussing terms, and that's where the complications came through. Because the working conditions, they tell you have to work a 9-hour shift or 10-hour shift, and when you're changing a shift, you have to work for about 9 hours. Then you add 6 hours so that you can come out in the morning, not morning, at noon, so that someone else picks up from the afternoon and you can have the next day off. When it comes in terms of payment, it's kind of dodgy, because at first they tell you a certain amount. Then the next day they tell you another amount, but at the time you sign the contract, it's a different amount. So you have already committed to something, but it's changing every day. And at the end of the day, you can't come out of it.
So Martin, when you signed this contract, what kind of work did you know that you were going to do? And then what kind of work did you end up doing?
From the job description, the work was described as operating an automatic machinery and just basic maintenance of a machine, which is not bad for someone who has done engineering. You can get the experience of maintaining machines. But when you get to the ground, you get its manual labor where you are packing up bottle tops, and after packing up, you have to take them to storage. You have to use a lot of energy. Nothing to do with skill. It's just basic manual labor that requires nothing to do with engineering.
Was the machine there? Because you signed up for operating automatic machinery. So when you got to start working, was the machine there? So what were you doing packing the bottle tops? Was that using the machine or was that using your hands?
Okay. The machine is there, but the bottle tops won't pack automatically. Okay. They are coming out, you're packing them in cartons and cartons and cartons, like 120 cartons in a night. So the machine is there, it's automated. That's the problem actually, because it's automated. You have to keep going. You can stop all night. Maybe a 10-15 minute break, but you have to keep going because it's automatic. Someone else is feeding the metal sheet on the other end, and you have the person who in the far end who is supposed to pack the bottle.
Martin, there's something I want to understand. When you said you mentioned you had expectations. When you pursued this particular qualification and then eventually got it, what exactly were you expecting in terms of what you would do, and what in terms of pay? What were you expecting you would be paid, and what is it that you actually received? Because clearly there's a disconnect here.
Yeah. There's a disconnect because when we are out of campus, we expect that you'll get a graduate trainee job, or you get a job which is it's not well paying. Maybe it's paying around 50,000, 60,000 that will get you to the next step. Maybe you work for 6 months to 1 year, then you get to the next step with experience. But for this job, the pay was really low, and it's different because there's no skill that you are earning from this job. It's something that eats you up. It takes all of yours, and at the end you can't progress career-wise. So for me, it was heartbreaking for doing engineering for almost 6 years, then coming back to the employment world, and the first thing I get is something so heartbreaking that even
is loading bottle cups. But then, Martin, there's an automated machine. It's producing the bottle tops. There's somebody who has got to feed the metal sheet. The machine does its thing. The machine produces the bottle tops. And then now Martin, the engineer, needs to remove the bottle tops that have been produced by the machine to the cartons. Isn't that gaining experience, really? Like you get, as an engineer, you're able to see this is the input, this is the output, this is the efficiency of the machine. Don't you think that would be like, somebody can argue that's a beginning point?
To be honest, there's no time to look at the system. You don't even know how the system works, because if you slack like 1 second, the bottle tops are falling off. And it's the whole night. So that means you have no time to look at the system. Even if it's engineering, it's an engineering system, there's no time to do that. You'll keep going, just packing the bottle tops.
But were there people within that particular establishment who actually looked at the system?
Yes, there's one guy who goes around. If anything goes wrong, you call him. But most of the time, I realized when these machines broke down, the same workers knows how to work around with it. There's supposed to be no breakdown time. The machine is supposed to be running 24 hours, maybe a 10-15 minute breaks, which is alternating. You can't just leave the machine not working.
Okay. So for this, I mean, clearly it was repetitive work over and over again. What were you earning for this kind of work? And because you were not the only one, there were very many people, and I'm just trying to think of other companies that did the same type of work. So here you are with a university degree, thinking your expectation was something totally different from what the reality turned out to be. What were you putting in your pocket? And I know you said it was not regular. It was a different price every now and then, but what would be your average earning per day for this kind of work?
Okay, they offered me to pay me for monthly, in terms of monthly. So they told me 30,000. That's gross salary. For me, the salary was not a bit bad. Okay, I was okay with it because I was more of getting experience and getting to the next step. But averagely, that's a good salary when it comes to industrial area, because when you go around and ask around, you realize that most of these workers earn below 10,000, which is way low. When you break it down to daily pay, it's even less than 500, which is casual workers get paid 500. So when you get these guys who get paid in monthly, you find out like watchman for these industries, they get less than 10,000, which is way less, way less, even for the casual workers.
Okay. In the kind of work that you were doing, I'm sure there were other people in your shift and in other shifts. Were they all engineers such as yourself, or were there some who were untrained or unskilled, so to speak?
Okay, most of them, they have experience. They have worked there for 5, 6, 7 years. I met this guy who told me he was in University of Nairobi. He has been there for 6 years doing the same work, and he can get out. He has a family.
Yeah.
He has to commit. He can just quit a job and just say, I'll look for another one. And you have a family that you need to feed.
That depends on you.
So, yeah, that depends on you. So this guy told me if he had, and he was wise before, like in the first year, he would have gotten out. But he's already 6 years in. He has a family, and it's we have a pandemic, and he can just get out. Just told me if you can do other things. You can just stay here. He gave me advice and told me if you can just get out, you just get out.
Let me ask this question. When you were studying a 6-year course, there must have been periods when you went for some practicum, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right. Now, in the factories that you went to, or the institutions you went to, what sort of practical work was expected of you as a student? What did they introduce you to? What did they inculcate in your training?
Okay, for the internship that I went, was there were fairly good companies. I went to EABL, so they integrate your engineering skills in terms of management and technical skills. You have to do different. It's a well thought out program, but you have to get involved in terms of the engineering part of management and the technical part. So for maybe a month, you do the management part. For 2 months, you do the practical part, where you have to be in the machines and actually doing the technical work in terms of repairs, maintenance, in terms of spares management. It's a whole different experience when it comes to this company like EABL. It's a very, very good company. Gives you good experience in terms of engineering. But when you go to the industrial area, it's a whole different experience, because they don't even look at your skill. They don't ask you, what are you skilled at? They just give you the job that they feel they have a vacancy, and they feel they need someone to do that job. Okay. Because I remember when I was getting that job, they rushed me. They're telling me, you need to report to this job. We are having losses. We are short staff.
Yeah.
You have to come. You
need to move in.
You need to move in. Like quick. They've been telling me you have to move out to work from where you live, because it's too far. You need, for this job, you need to be somewhere a bit closer so that you can commit like
a lot
this
more
number
time.
of hours. A lot of more time. Yeah.
Let's take a break and then we continue the conversation. We are talking and having a conversation with Martin Wairegi. He is an engineering graduate of the University of Nairobi, who's giving his experience with getting a job and working within industrial area. He went onto Twitter posted a Twitter thread with his frustrations and his experience of what he has gone through getting a job and the kind of work that he has had to do. This caught the attention of Alcags and his team at the Open Institute, and they decided, let's actually collect some more data. Alcags, just take us through the main highlights of the report, what you found out, and then what we can say is the plight of the workers in industrial area.
So the plight of Martin was replicated among many other people. 71% of them get safety equipment, but they have to pay for it out of their meager salary. In majority of the cases, they are given very basic safety equipment. So you find that either you're given gloves or you're given gumboots, but you're not given, like a proper overall where it is required. But you're not allowed to ask any questions about it. Mm-hmm. We talked about Workman's cover. Only 40% of them received Workman's cover. Now, the reason for that is also, apart from the fact that a lot of them are casual, is that a lot of them are employed through agencies. So the actual employer, the person they have a contract with, is an agency who has been subcontracted by the factory, which means that the factory has no real obligations towards you as a person. Leave days were a joke for majority of those people. You are told you must work or else. The average pay for majority of those people is 550 shillings per person per day, or 4,200 per week, or 16,950 per month. That's the average pay. Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things that we found, like Martin said, is that a lot of the people that we spoke to were paid a lot less than that 550. And certainly what their take-home was is often much less, because what happens is that there are many deductions. You dropped a bottle top, or you broke something, you're charged for that. There's a deduction for you wearing gumboots, you're charged for that. There's a deduction for you having goggles, you're charged for that. You're charged for lunch. You're supposed to take care of your own lunch and your own dinner, even though you're working for 18 hours. Now, what was interesting is that we met somebody who had been working for 14 hours on that particular day, had only had 2 breaks of 15 minutes in that time, and he cannot protest, he cannot argue, he cannot say anything. We found that majority of these people are aware of the Central Organization for Trade Unions, CORTU. Many of them are aware of it, but they had no idea what it does for them. In fact, some of them claimed that there's a deduction on their pay that has been made to go to the union, but they don't even know who the union rep is, who they're supposed to talk to, nothing. Out of the people that we spoke to 95% men, only 5% women. Not because we did not try. Majority of the women were like, I can't talk because of the fact that I can't lose this job. I don't want to jeopardize this job at all. The sense of fear that we found walking around in Australia was very, very high. Some people would even refuse to speak to us because if I am seen taking an interview, I can be told, go and get a job from those guys who you are interviewing, because when we are doing the interview, they thought we were media. Go and be employed by those guys because we don't want to have to work with you. This is the kind of situation that these people live in, and it is very scary. It is very sad.
Let's try and get you on a better line, Alcags, because I think this one has a bit of noise. And as we do that, we continue the conversation with Martin Wairegi, and also just reviewing that data that Alcags is giving us. Very many people working in industrial area, and they do not have any sort of insurance cover, and that is among the mandatory insurance protection that you need to have. The number of leave days, on average, people getting just 12 leave days. 71% are those that have been given safety equipment, and many of them have been told that we are going to surcharge you for the safety equipment that we are giving you to work in this particular organization. So still, it's like, you want to come and work here, go and get yourself all the safety equipment and come. So there's all the issues and that come out of this statistics. We'll continue the conversation with Alcags and ask him, so what does this mean for us? What does it mean? But because Martin and you and your team went around collecting this information from the people in industrial area, in what cadres of people were you talking to? Were you talking to people at senior level, people who have skill like yours, engineers, people who are casual laborers? What kind of people did you speak to mostly?
Okay, mostly we spoke to casual laborers, because when you get the senior management, those guys don't come out to get lunch at kibandas, at going to chill out where there's some grass under the trees. So we mostly deal with casual laborers. The senior management, I can say they already have arrangements for their lunch, but for these casuals, most of them, they don't even go out to get lunch. They go out to have a break.
Okay.
And
What is the
10, 15
education
minutes.
level of the most of the people that you spoke to?
Most of them are not well educated, but you get some isolated cases where someone told you that they did a diploma, they did a degree, but this is what they're doing. They have been doing it for 6 years, 7 years, or 10 years, and they have no way out. They don't have an option. You've already been in a casual work for 10 years. You don't even have the confidence to get to another interview. Even if you have that degree, you can't have the confidence. You can't have the time to go look for the work that suits your degree.
Martin, do you think that managing and manning and moving bottle tops in a factory is demeaning for somebody who has studied engineering?
It's not demeaning per se, but what you learned for 6 years, you can say it's not utilized. Because the same job, you can get someone who is unskilled, who hasn't gone to school, and you train him for 10 minutes, and you'll do the job. He'll do the job. Maybe he'll do even better than the person who did 6 years in engineering.
Okay. But these fellows at this company needed somebody to do that job. Now, clearly, your education was not being utilized in the manner in which you would have expected, because you went to university for 6 years and you expected that this is the kind of work that you should do. So then the question then must be asked, would you have thought about going somewhere else, number one? Or is this what was available at the time that you needed this employment? So was it necessity of work, or was it the quest for utilization of your skills that was more important at this time?
At this time was my welfare. I got out because of my welfare. I felt like if you do the job for 18 hours, it's not even good for your health. I was lucky because I don't have a family. I'm still young. I can still look for other opportunities. But for me, getting out of this job wasn't because of it's for my own welfare. And I knew if I was stuck there, I'll be there for quite some time. These companies don't give you an option to progress.
Rise,
They don't give you career progression. They don't promote you. They don't increase your pay. They don't give you time to explore other opportunities. You can get time to.
How do you
to
know
go for
all
another
this, Martin? I mean,
interview.
you worked there for less than a year. How do you know that this is not what happens in these companies?
I have different after this trade. I get talking to people. You get to people come to your DM to confess about the company. They don't want you to expose it.
Okay.
They just want someone to listen to them. So someone comes and tells you, I've been here for 10 years. I've been working. It's not like I'm comfortable here. If I had an option, I would get out. But I don't have anything else. I don't have a way out, basically.
That's understood.
They're telling
Martin.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so Alkags, what are we looking at here? Just looking at then now this research that you did and this data that you then collected. If we're looking at two sides to this, those who are running these companies will say, you know what, I need this work done. I am not able to put in place a complete employment scheme. I need quick work on the day for who is available, and that's what I'm going to go for. This is the job that is available. This is what I'm doing. So if somebody comes along and they're looking for that job whereby their experience or their skills, their expertise will be utilized, this is not the place to be. They're looking for worker bees who will complete a task and then they go on. And to what extent can we fault these organizations? Because, I mean, these companies, because they're quite a number from what you've been able to collect in terms of data.
So one of the things that we need to agree on right off the bat is that everybody is entitled to have decent working conditions. Working conditions that do not interfere with your human rights, working conditions that ensure that you, as a human being, retain your dignity. Now, here's the challenge. If you have somebody who is working for 9 hours with 2 10-minute breaks,
Yep.
and they're standing for those 9 hours, do they have dignity?
Of course, no, well, clearly not.
Okay? So it doesn't matter whether they're an engineer or they're an entirely unskilled worker who has literally just come from shack and they have gone into this job. Ultimately, they should have longer than 10 minutes breaks in 8 or 9 hours. They should be paid well. They should at least be given lunch. You are finding that a lot of these people are paid a lot less just simply because of the fact that they choose to have lunch or they choose to have protective gear. Incidentally, in the industrial area right now, we found the majority of the people who are given protective gear have to pay for it. Now, if they have to pay for it, it means that some of them actually choose not to work with protective gear, at which point the company says it's your choice. It shouldn't have to be your choice.
It shouldn't have to be a choice. Okay, so then are we at the point whereby we're looking further now and saying the situation and clearly in Nairobi's industrial area is not good for people who have to work as casual laborers, whether you are educated or whether you have just reached a certain level of education, that there are basic requirements for a job condition, a job situation, and if so, what are those? Because clearly, as you've said, the trade unions, whoever else then is supposed to protect workers' rights, maybe, okay, they've looked the other way for quite some time. What are the basic requirements that we're asking for?
We're asking that, if you look at the global conventions, they say that people should have a certain amount of breaks, at least 3 breaks. In fact, just like your job currently, you should have a break every 2 hours of a couple of minutes. You should have time where you have to sit down. If you're standing, you cannot be made to stand the whole day with no breaks, because that affects your health, because it affects your spinal cord, it affects your legs and so on. You should have adequate leave days. You should have, the kind of space for you to be able to rest your back. You should be given the kind of protective equipment that ensures that you are not likely to harm yourself. And you should be given Workmans insurance that assures you that if you are hurt on the job, then for sure you'll be protected. Now, the loophole that a lot of these companies take is that because of the fact that you're not directly my employee, you're employed through an agency, I don't have responsibilities for you in terms of Workman's insurance, or because of the fact that you are a casual laborer who I met this morning, then I do not have responsibilities for you for your insurance. Unfortunately, the situation then becomes that a lot of these workers get hurt, and they're told, well, go to hospital when you're ready, come back.
Let me ask this question. We have a ministry that deals with labor in this country, isn't it? Theoretically, I believe that one of their functions should be to actually act as protectors of the workforce that we have in this country. So far, have I got this thing right, or am I imagining it?
So I think there's a number of people who should be responsible for this. There's one, the Ministry of Labor, for sure. The second one is the union, or the various unions that currently exist. COTU is the overall body, but you've got other unions within the space. Then you've got people like the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, who are supposed to be maintaining and upholding standards for this in the manufacturing space. You've got the Kenya Private Sector's Alliance. You've got FKE. All of these organizations, it is not that they are not aware that this is the situation that a lot of these people are working in. But the fact of the matter is, there seems to be, in our view, there seems to be a conspiracy of silence, so to speak, that people just don't speak.
And Al, why do you think there's this conspiracy of silence?
Profits, I think. But the labor is woefully undercapacitated in the sense that they should be doing, for example, regular inspections at the factories. But they don't have enough inspectors to go around. So what they do is that they make an appointment, and of course, we know how compromises work. So there's a serious challenge that, as a country, we need to pay attention to. Now, a lot of that will change if the unions were a lot more active. A lot of that will change if the unions fought for the rights of those workers. But you'll find that every time you hear a strike, it's against the government. Every time you hear a strike, it's teachers, it is nurses, it is, and so on and so forth. When do you last hear of a strike for manufacturing workers?
Well, what is their union anyway? What union represents workers in many of the factories that you visited in the industrial area?
So there's a whole bunch of unions. There's manufacturing unions that work within the various sort of types of factories. But the overall union that, for purposes of this conversation, we would call to action here is COTU itself, because COTU is the umbrella body. And a lot of those workers have a deduction on their pay that is specifically going to COTU. So that means that the COTU has a responsibility for them that it is not quite taking up.
Do these factories even have shop stewards?
Do they have what?
Shop stewards.
They should, but many of them don't, and where they do, they don't have a voice. The biggest thing that you will find when you speak to factory workers, as we did when we were going around and sort of looking at this information, is that workers themselves do not have a voice. And even when they have something to say, they don't dare speak. Because if you dare speak, what is going to happen is that tomorrow you will have
no job.
In fact, they have a phrase. They say, nitamwaga unga.
Yep.
Mimi nikiongea sahi nitamwaga unga. Where am I going to go tomorrow and I have children?
But you know, Al, if we were to be honest about this discussion, yes, if you are looking at a totem pole of employment in the country, the workers we're speaking of are somewhere near the bottom. But this conspiracy of silence happens everywhere in our country. You have a situation that arises and somehow people suddenly become very vague. They're not very sure. And yet they may be the people who are actually responsible and the people who are to have that information. Now, so long as we have unemployment on the rise in this country, and yet we keep producing people in our institutions who are supposed to get work, do you realistically think that this sort of situation will change?
So this is how I think that, this is our theory of how it changes.
Yes.
That the workers themselves realize that they're not alone. When we did this research, what we did is that we took the data back to the workers, and we're taking the data back to the workers to try and show them, you're not alone. This is actually something that is happening across the board, and it is very common. So go ahead and get together, start speaking. The one challenge that we have as a country is that citizens are not active enough to speak up the way we're regular. If more citizens spoke up, if more citizens said, this is the experience that we're having, there's a lot of young people who are working in the factory workers. And if they're listening to this show, I am asking them, get on their social media and actually talk about what is actually happening to them. Get as many people as you can and start calling out the COTUs of this world. Start calling out your MCAs, start calling out whoever it is. Speak up, because the more you speak up together, number one, it is more difficult for you to be victimized.
Yeah.
Number two, it is easier for you to, get your rights back. But most importantly, let's call the people who are responsible for this to act. Let's call the government to go and pay attention. Let's call COTU to go and actually fight for the rights of this worker. Let's call Kenya Association of Manufacturers to set up and uphold the standards that are supposed to be held up there.
And I agree with you, and I think even the Federation of Kenya Employers comes in handy here. But as we talk about the central organization of trade unions, the affiliate members that are responsible here should also be active. And if we are saying that workers are unionizable and you've joined a union and you're contributing to that union, then you should also be an active citizen, just like you said, or the Open Institute. Be an active citizen and ensure that you have better management and leadership in your union before you even go to COTU itself. Because I'm just looking at the COTU affiliate unions. There's the Amalgamated Union of Kenya Metal Workers. I'm sure some of them are in industrial area. Bakery, confectionery, manufacturing and allied workers. I'm sure some of them are in industrial area. Kenya Chemical and Allied Workers Union. There's a Plantation and Agricultural Workers Union. There are many others, Railway Workers Union, Transport and Allied Workers Union. All of these, and I think maybe that's something that you can do at the Open Institute, sensitizing the workers on the need to pay attention to the union they belong to. First of all, are you in the right union? Are you unionized? Do you know your leadership? From your shop steward at your local level all the way to the national leadership of your union, then push that. So that then that organization as a trade union can have an engagement with your employers, with FKE or your individual employers. And maybe that would even change the conversation a little bit and pursue further up the conversation with the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection.
Yeah, you're very right. Now, one of the stories that we heard, while we were there, is we actually spoke to somebody who was an official of a union. We wanted to know why our people were interviewing workers. And so when we explained, he said, listen, you guys are going to spoil my job because as a union representative, this is a very cushy job. What generally happens is that among the companies, there's a budget that goes out to the unions and there's a budget that goes out to the union leaders. So you find that the union leaders, in most cases, earn a very, very nice income from the company, and as a result, they do not feel that they can rock that boat. It's a vicious conspiracy that I think people like Express FM are really helping to put up.
Thank you very much. We thank you very much, Al Kags, for the good job that you've done with this at the Open Institute with a report, which is the Decent Work Initiative. How can people get access to these reports?
So this report, we have made sure that it is online in a very easy to consume way. It is on decentwork.africa. So if you go to www.decentwork.africa, you'll be able to review the report that we have done. It's very well visualized so that it's not in long words. It's very easy to be consumed by everyone.
Okay, very good stuff. Martin, thank you very much also for sharing your experience with us.